Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Seahawks Recap Show, and welcome to the playoff game recaps for the 2023-2024 season. And how are we feeling after Sunday's games? Well, no one expected this game to go like it did, and myself included. Let's start off with game three of the wild card weekend. It was the Dallas Cowboys versus the Packers, and this one was a shock to everyone involved. I'm happy the Packers got the win. They're the first seventh seed to win a playoff game since it was introduced back in, I believe, 2021. So it's a very impressive feat. And this is also very impressive. It was a 48 to 32 win for the Packers on the road. And let's start off with Dallas's stats first. And these stats are kind of misleading, so I'll explain that in a bit. They had 510 total yards, 387 passing yards, 123 rushing yards, averaged 5.7 yards per play, 37 first downs. They went 10 for 16 on third down. They went 0 for 2 on fourth down, had 89 total plays, 4 sacks allowed, 2 punts, 6 penalties for 48 yards given up, 0 fumbles, 2 interceptions, one from Jair Alexander at the beginning of the game, and one in the second half, given up to Darnell Savage for a pick six. And they had 31 minutes and 5 seconds of possession time. On the Green Bay Packers side, they had 406 and 15 total yards, 272 passing yards, 143 rushing yards, 7.7 yards per play, 22 first downs. They went 6 for 10 on third down, went 1 for 1 on fourth down. They had 54 total plays, 0 sacks allowed. So, congrats to the Green Bay Packers O-line for not giving up any sacks against this Dallas defense. They also had 3 punts, 7 penalties for 66 yards given up, 0 fumbles, 0 interceptions, and they had 28 minutes and 55 seconds of possession time. For Ryan's focus players, let's talk about the Cowboys for a second, and let's talk about Dak Prescott. Overall, he went 41 for 60, having 403 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 picks, again, one by Jair Alexander, and a pick six by Darnell Savage. So overall, he had a decent game stats wise for Dak Prescott. However, there were a lot of like miscues from him to CeeDee Lamb. There were a lot of opportunities there on offense that really just should have led to touchdowns or points, and they just some of them just didn't. And it was only till like that second half where they still just got going. And even then, it was more of their points were scored in the fourth quarter. I believe it was 16. I'll have that in my final thoughts. So, again, overall, good game from Dak, but wish they played a full 60 minutes. And let's get to the running back, Tony Pollard. 15 carries, 56 yards, averaged 3.7 yards per carry, 1 touchdown. He did okay. For what it was on the ground, he was the only running back really at this Dallas Cowboys game that was really doing much of anything. So he did okay for Tony Pollard. And the wide receiver or the tight end in this case, I'm going to highlight is Jake Ferguson, 10 receptions, 93 yards, 9.3 yards per reception, and 3 touchdowns. And if you're wondering why I'm not giving it to CeeDee Lamb, CeeDee Lamb had a lot of drops in this game. I don't know what was going on with the Dak Prescott led offense, but it was just a lot of miscommunications between those two. And Jake Ferguson, is honestly not the best receiver in terms of yards, but the most consistent I felt in this game. So that's why I gave it to him. On the Packers side of things, we got Jordan Love, man, and he went 16 for 21, 272 in passing yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. A really clean game for a guy that was making his playoff debut. A lot of these guys were making their playoff debuts for the Packers. So it was really nice to see them go on the road and really show up in a hostile environment. We know how tough it is to play in Dallas's home stadium, and this was just really impressive from Jordan Love. He controlled the game, and one part of him controlling the game was the running back, Aaron Jones. 21 carries, 118 yards, averaged 5.6 yards per carry, and 3 touchdowns. He loves coming back to Dallas. And, every time he's there, he just rips it up. And it's just really good to see these types of numbers from Aaron Jones. Good job from him. And another good job from wide receiver Romeo Dobbs. 6 receptions, 151 yards, averaged 25.2 yards per reception, and 1 touchdown. He had never had in his 2-year career an 100-yard game. And what a time for him to have, because he was electrifying, man. The amount of catches he got and the amount of wide open space the whole offense for Green Bay got in this game was just exceptional. And on the other side of the ball, let's talk about the Cowboys defense. DeMarcus Lawrence, one solo tackle, 3 assisted, 0 sacks, 0 forced fumbles, and honestly, DeMarcus Lawrence didn't play terribly, and that defense, the defense on the defensive line portion of the defense didn't play terribly. It was just they weren't getting in for pressure. They weren't allowed. This Packers offensive line was just really good. And the way you see DeMarcus Lawrence is he's a very, very good edge rusher, man. He's one of the best to do it, in my opinion. And he just couldn't get in, but he did make some stops in the run game, so that's always good to see. Next, we give it to the DB, and it's safety Jaron Curse. 5 solo tackles, 0 assisted, 0 sacks, 0 interceptions. And the reason why I'm giving it to Jaron Curse is out of all the secondary players, there wasn't really good enough players to talk about because they let up 48 points at home. And it was something that I'm just like looking at. I'm looking at the DBs and I'm like, who made some of the better plays in the game for Dallas? And it was Jaron Curse, man. Breaking up passes when he could and making sure to at least tackle when really needed. And that was really needed for Dallas. It's just really hard to pick a good DB in this game because they were all having issues on defense. But we get to the linebacker, and it's Germon Clark. 5 solo tackles, 3 assisted, 0 sacks, 0 interceptions. Again, a guy, this whole secondary was having issues, but a guy that was able to make tackles and do them well. Getting Aaron Jones on the ground in some respects, and helping out the team when they really needed it. Just wish that the Cowboys defense could have forced a turnover in this game to help out. But we get to the Packers defense, and I gave the D line award to big man DT Kenny Clark. 2 solo tackles, 0 assisted, 0 sacks, 0 forced fumbles. And you're looking at that and going, well, his stats aren't great. Why are you picking Kenny Clark? Well, the whole Packers defense was based on linebackers and corners. Those guys were insane. And you look at the guys that got pressure from those sacks, they were linebackers, and there was a corner in there, but the D line really didn't do much in terms of stats, but they were making sure that they took enough space up to allow linebackers to come down and swoop in on Dak Prescott and things of that nature. The pressure that these guys generated, especially Kenny Clark himself, was immaculate for Dak Prescott. Four pressures that led him into trouble, and it was just a nice overall game from this D line. But we talk about DB corner, and it's a rookie corner, and it's Parton Valentine. He came in for the injured Jair Alexander after he picked off a pass. He did tweak, I believe it was his ankle, something that he was nursing in this game, and he was on CD Lamb a lot this game. 6 solo tackles, 2 assisted, 0 sacks, 0 interceptions. And the reason why he has so many tackles and the reason why, he doesn't have a pick or a sack is basically because he was usually blanketing CD Lamb. He was usually blanketing wide receivers like Michael Gallup, for example, Brendan Cooks when Jair went down. So it was a matchup for matchup basis. And yes, although CD Lamb did get 100 yards, for most of the game, CD Lamb was neutralized. So good job from the DB in Valentine. We get to the linebacker, and it's who else but Devondre Campbell. Out of all these linebackers, I could have picked a slew of these guys, but I chose to give it to Devondre Campbell. 6 solo tackles, 2 assisted, 1 sack, no interceptions. And again, he was another guy who was ready to make plays when he needed to. He could have had a pick in there. He had 1 sack in there, so there was the pressure from these linebackers, and he was just all over the place. He was a menace for this Cowboys offense. So good game from him. And my final thoughts on the game. Okay, so no one expected this game, I think, to go the way it did. For the Packers, putting up 48 points in an offensive showing against a Dallas team that hasn't lost a game at home for, I believe it said on the broadcast, 16 straight. The last time the Cowboys lost at home was, I believe, 2022, and that was against Tom Brady for the Buccaneers. So, what a statement. Congrats to the Packers on the win, and I can't wait to see what you guys do in the divisional. You're playing with house money, you're the 7th seed, and you got no pressure on this season because you guys are frankly a rebuilding team. No one expected you to be here, and I'm glad you guys aren't out in the wild card because you took the Seattle Seahawks spot in the wild card for that 7th seed. So I'm glad you guys made it to the divisional, and I can't wait to see what happens against the 49ers. For the Cowboys, this is just an embarrassment, honestly. The stats don't tell the full game and how this game went. If the Cowboys played a full 60 minutes of football, this game could have been so different. This is the most points allowed in a playoff game for Dallas in franchise history. And when I say the stats don't tell the story, and the reason why I said at the beginning of the video they were a little inflated is due to this. Look at what happens in that fourth quarter. That fourth quarter was 16 points. It was 27-7 at the half, and that's insane. But they scored 16 points in the fourth quarter to make it look interesting, but by the third, it was kind of over at that point. So that's why stats can be a little misleading. But I don't know what's next for Dallas. I hope that they make some changes because obviously this team can be a playoff team and this team should be a playoff team, but just the miscues on offense and defense was what let them down. Anyways, this is it for the game recap of Wildcard Game 3, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please consider leaving a like and please consider hitting subscribe so you don't miss out on any more of the game recaps coming for the playoffs this season. Anyways, I can't wait to see what today, as in Monday, holds for the rest of the wild card. Almost there to the divisional. Have a good day, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your week. I will see you either later on tonight or tomorrow morning for game 5 and game 6 of the wild card round.